What do you think? You don't think Nancy should have been able to have an abortion?
I mean, Nancy, my heart broke when I heard your story, because that's the worst thing any mom wants to hear, is that their baby is going to die. Their baby has a life-threatening illness. My husband and I, we had a miscarriage about 2 years ago. They were some of the darkest days of my life. And they were dark days because it was our child. You know, we knew this was a baby. And I think that's the fundamental point here, is that we're talking about a baby. We're talking about a human life. And the pro-life position is that all humans have human rights. And the first right is life, to not be killed. You know, from the moment of fertilization until natural death. And so, you know, Nancy, you deserve better. You deserve better health care. There's perinatal hospice, there's palliative care, so that your baby could die in the loving arms of their parents instead of at the abortionist tools.
Okay, I've got some questions for you about that, and we've got to take a break, and then Ben has an important point to make. Coming up, should the government dictate what a woman can do with her body? That's a big question. And when does life begin? You define that as at the point of fertilization, right?
Well, that's science. It's not my opinion. The science is clear when human life begins at the moment of fertilization.
Well,
and
that's the
all
question.
humans have human rights, is our
That's
position.
the question I've got for you. We'll talk about all that when we come back.
There is nothing you could possibly say to justify that level of lack of empathy. And that's the problem I feel like in this country at the moment. We were founded on the lack of empathy, and we've just kept up with that tradition. If you have no empathy.
Abortion is devastating to women's mental health. No one talks about that. The year after a woman has an abortion,
it's really like
the year after a woman
to have the child. What kind of trauma is
the trauma is from the rape.
Somebody?
The trauma is from the rape. The child's an innocent party there.
The child isn't born yet. It's not there.
We should not take out generational sin on a child to say there's generational sin and that dad was an abuser, so the child should be killed. That's not fair to the child.
We're talking about rights, and he just said we've been taken. A right has been taken away from us. And what is next?
I want to address that, because our fundamental human right that we all share in this room is life. It's the first human right. Laws are meant to protect the weak. In a society, who's the weakest? Who's the weakest in the society? A child.
The poor.
They don't have a voice. They can't speak. A child in the womb, or a poor child would be the weakest.
Keep them that way by
and a child with disability. Listen, whether you live 10 minutes or 10 years or 100 years, you're a human life, and you have the right to not be killed. And that's what the pro-life fight is all about. That's what we're fighting for, a culture of life where we provide real health care. You know, abortion is the intentional destruction of an innocent human life.
Doesn't a woman
we can do
have a
better
right
than
to
that.
choose that for herself?
A right to choose what? A right to choose what?
Doesn't a woman have a right to choose what happens to her body?
But what's in her body?
You were wanting to say something right before we went to break.
Thank you, Dr. Phill. Two quick things, and I'm so glad we're having this conversation. The first thing is this. Abortion advocates have decided when life begins in their book. It's at birth. They say before birth, it's not a child, doesn't have human rights, can be killed at will for any reason, and then after birth, it magically becomes a human. That's not logical. That's not scientific. We know that human life begins before birth. It doesn't begin at birth. So that's the first thing. The second thing is a question for you, Christian, would be this. You know, the National Organization for Women, my understanding, your organization supports abortion up until the moment of birth for any reason, taxpayer funded. Is that your position?
Well, we believe people have a right to choose.
Up until the moment of birth, for any reason.
It's not for our organization or myself or anyone else or advocate to determine where they determine that point is for them and regarding the gestational age of when they seek an abortion care. So it's very important to point that out. And as for regarding funding sources, right now there is a Hyde Amendment that's in place, and the Hyde Amendment only provides Medicaid funding for abortions under extreme circumstances, incest, rape, and some very few medical issues where it's concerning for the life of woman or the fetus. It's a financial cost on the person who is choosing to move forth their planning and what they do. It is not covered a lot of times under federal funding. Taxpayers are not always paying for
Just
this.
to clarify,
Do taxpayers sometimes pay for it?
It does. In California, it does.
Part of, yeah, depends on the state, but some states do have where they use their funds for their state.
But just to clarify, this is a really important point. The abortion position, the position of now your organization, is abortion up until the moment of birth for any reason. It's an extreme, extraordinary position, and that's built on this idea of dehumanizing the child in the womb. which is what the abortion position has done. It's saying they're not a human, if they're conceived in violence, if they have a disability, if they're really sick, kill them. That's the abortion position. And the pro-life position is saying, treat them like a human being.
Let me correct
treat them
your
with
position
dignity.
on now. Our position is to keep abortion legal.
Through all 9 months of pregnancy, is that correct?
Our position is to keep abortion legal.